Do you love your creative push? Consider taking 2 minutes to leave a nice review on iTunes. By telling how the show has helped you, you'll help other people find it so they can help them too. If you need some simple instructions on how to do it, head to yourcreativepush.com/review. Thank you in advance for leaving a review, and thank you again to those who already have. Your Creative Push, episode 225.
So often we hold ourselves back from completing a project or from putting ourselves out there because we don't think that either we ourselves or our work is perfect yet. But perfect doesn't exist, and so done is better than perfect.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Amy Kuretsky. Amy is a health coach, acupuncturist, and herbalist with expertise in traditional Chinese medicine, digestive health, and a wide variety of nutritional plants. She coaches creative entrepreneurs to be their healthiest selves and to tap into the energy that is the source of everything we do. Amy also hosts Health Fuels Hustle, a podcast all about living a healthier life as a creative. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. So I was hoping maybe you could start out by telling us your story and kind of how you went down the path to become a health coach and acupuncturist.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have now been in the health field for close to 10 years now, on and off, between my health coaching, being an acupuncturist, and before that I even worked in a natural food store working with health supplements and whatnot. But way before that, I was actually in the art world. So I actually started working after getting a bachelor's degree in art history. I worked at modern art museums for a while. So that's kind of where this whole foundation of me working with creatives comes from, because I definitely come from this art background, and that's where I really feel comfortable, and the people that I work with feel comfortable. But through that whole process, basically, I got sick, just like a lot of other health professionals, especially in the alternative medicine or complementary medicine field. Most of us end up coming to this medicine because we found it helpful for ourselves. And I myself was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease in 2004. And through that, basically went through many different channels and different routes, but ended up finding Chinese medicine and finding it really incredibly helpful for me. It ended up changing my life so much that I was able to get off of all the Western pharmaceutical drugs that I was on for the autoimmune disease. And I've now been drug-free for 8 years or so.
Oh,
and so,
nice.
Yeah, so it's been a huge shift for me. And so, that is what eventually brought me to Chinese medicine, to becoming an acupuncturist. And after I started my acupuncture business about 4 or 5 years ago, I realized that although we are taught many amazing things in our master's degree program for Chinese medicine, being a business owner is not one of them. And so I really had to, I feel like this is common with a lot of artists and creatives. We're really good at our art or what we do, but we're not always necessarily good at marketing it or having people buy from us. And so I really had to kind of become my own teacher when it came to how to run a business and how to sell my services and whatnot. And through that, I really kind of found myself in this community of online entrepreneurs and creative entrepreneurs. And it just really resonated with me. And I got along with so many of them so well. And I found that so many of them were really burning the candle at both ends. They were maybe working a day job and doing their art or their creative side hustle at night. They were, helping raise children or raise their families. And they just had so much going on that they were really letting their health kind of fall by the wayside. And I found that this was a community that really needed support when it came to their health. And so after running my acupuncture business for several years, I do still continue to do that, but I've also kind of created my own side hustle, which is really working with creative entrepreneurs and helping them really fuel their hustle with their health.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And that's exactly kind of the audience here, including the host. I definitely struggle from burnout because like you said, I have a full-time job and then you come home and you're already burnt out whenever you get to my creative passion. I'm just tired but I'm you have to push through it. And I think that health and sleep are two of the things that get sacrificed first. So what is the first thing that you would say to somebody like me?
Yeah, totally. Well, what I find so interesting is that people like you and like me and that have these side hustles, like we do them because we are passionate about them. Like we do them because they are actually part of our really integral self-care practices. We wouldn't be putting all of this time and energy and hustle into this work if it didn't somehow come back to us in some way. Whereas maybe our day jobs, for me, I'm lucky that I do love my day job and I'm my own boss in both my day job and my side hustle. But for many people, maybe their day jobs are more of a drain to their energy source, whereas their side hustle, yes, it does take energy and it takes time and whatnot, but it does give something back to them. And so they really find that that is what keeps drawing them back in, is that their creative pursuit is actually like a self-care practice in and of itself. And so, yes, their sleep is important. Yes, food and how we choose to fuel our bodies are important. But I really find that what it all comes down to from all these different little side areas is just our self-care and how we refuel our own batteries. And so, yes, that might be sleep. Yes, that might be food. Yes, that might be exercise. That might be a spiritual practice, but it's also our creative art, because all of these things all together really are what constitutes fueling our hustle.
Absolutely. And to see the creative passion, I like how you said that, like that it's like self-care practice in itself, but to kind of see it as that. So whenever you get to it, it doesn't feel like, like I have to get to this. I have to, I have this tight deadline. I need to put something out by now. Like I need to do this for a client. I need to do this for myself. It's like trying to enjoy that process as much as possible. But what happens when we have all these tight deadlines and when we do kind of overburden ourselves with our creative passion, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So then I think it really comes down to priorities and really focusing on like what your goals are and what your priorities are and all of these little things. Because as creatives, we like to take on all the projects. We tend to be like yes people. We're like, we're very like creative in our brainstorming as well. So then we get this like great idea and another great idea. And it just kind of overburdens us with saying yes to all these things, even if it's just saying yes to ourselves all the time. And so when I'm working with my clients, one of the first exercises I usually lead them through, and I can kind of explain it here, but it's all about picking your priorities. And so I'll kind of explain it, but then I also have a little handout that I can give to you and you can put on your show notes for your listeners. But basically it's a worksheet and there's 4 boxes all coming together. So it looks like one big box with a vertical line and a horizontal line through it. And in it, on the very top, one column is going to be categorized by things you love doing. The other column is categorized by things that you don't necessarily love doing. And then on the side, on the rows, the top row is going to be, this is where you can change it up. But I usually start it with things that are going to get you towards your goal in your business or things that are bringing you money in your business. And then below that, it's things that aren't necessarily bringing you towards your goal or aren't necessarily bringing you money. Choose like one or the other, either the goal or the money, whatever is more important to you right now. But then you literally do a brain dump of all the things you do. It can be just within your business or everything. It can include, daily chores and stuff like that in your home life. But you brain dump everything. And then you just start plugging away. So taking all of those itemized things that you wrote down in your brain dump and start putting them in these 4 boxes. So either they're going to be something that you love doing and it brings you money. Or it's going to be something that brings you money, but you don't necessarily love doing it. Or it's going to be something that you love doing, but it doesn't bring you any money. Or it's going to be something that you don't love doing and it doesn't bring you money. And then you have this very visual representation of all the things you're doing and what's helping you get closer to your goals or bring you money and what's really kind of draining away your energy. And then you can really visually quite easily see, this isn't bringing me any money and I don't love doing it. How can I get it off my plate? Because we have too much stuff on our plate. And so it really is essentially honing in on what our priorities are and getting rid of anything that isn't serving us.
Yeah, I love that idea of being able to dump it too, to try to find a way to, because I think we get, humans are creatures of habit. So we get in these habits of like daily routines of, all right, this is the process I did to create this piece, or this is the process I did to put it out there. And oftentimes that's just habit. It just, you do the same thing over and over again, and without even realizing that doing this one certain thing doesn't actually bring you money or more followers or joy. So
Totally.
to actually write it down like that, I think is a really good practice.
Yeah. And it's all about, when it comes to energy and our health and fueling our hustle, it's all about, building up our reserves. And so if we can do more of the things that we love doing, awesome if it brings us money, but also awesome if it doesn't bring us money. If it's going to maybe bring us other things like energy or joy, those are just as important as money or reaching our goals. And so really being able to focus in on those things and finding ways that we can either, totally just get off of our plate the things that aren't working for us, or at least delegate them out to somebody else. Oftentimes what I see when it comes to creative entrepreneurs is that they really fear delegation, whether it's because they fear that they don't have the money to hire a VA, like a virtual assistant, or they fear that no one else can do it as well as they can, which oftentimes we find that, when I hired my first VA, I was all nervous about it too. And it turns out she could put up a blog post that I had written in a Google document. She could put it up online in half the time that it takes me to do it. And it looks just as good, if not better, So really figuring out how we can delegate things can be hugely important as well.
Right. It's that OCD thing. I certainly have that too. And it's one of the things that I need to get over for maybe hiring somebody to edit the podcast, because that takes the longest. But I'm like, it's so precious, it's like my thing. And what if they do the one small thing wrong? But you're right. Sometimes if that's what they're doing and they have 100% of their energy devoted to it, as opposed to you who has maybe 5% of your energy devoted to it because you're trying to spin so many other plates, maybe they can actually do it better, and you have to kind of let go of that. And I think that's a tough thing sometimes.
Yeah, not only can they maybe do it better, but even if that one little tiny mistake happens, most likely you're the only person that's going to notice it.
Exactly. So you got to be less precious.
Oh, completely less precious. And that's something that I've been trying to really bring into my life in lots of different ways. A good mantra that I've been really sticking to lately, that a client and I came up with for her a while ago, but I find it's really applicable for so many people, is that done is better than perfect. Because there's no such thing as perfect out there. Perfect is a myth. And so often we hold ourselves back from completing a project or from putting ourselves out there because we don't think that either we ourselves or our work is perfect yet, but perfect doesn't exist. And so done is better than perfect most often.
Absolutely. And one of the things I've learned from this podcast is that done is better than perfect, but also no matter what, you're going to continue to get better after this project's done. So no matter when you decided that it is finished, you're going to end up seeing things in it that aren't perfect because you're going to get better. So just get it over with and call it done and move on to the next thing, because no matter what, you're going to continue to grow, and no matter what, you're going to always see the kind of the flaws in it. So it's never going to be perfect.
Completely. And it's just, like you said, you're going to grow from every experience. So if you hold yourself back from finishing it because you don't think it's perfect, you're not actually going to continue to grow in that way.
100%. So what would you say is the number one thing that creative people come to you for help with?
Yeah, I would say 100% it's feeling overwhelmed. Without a doubt, all of my creative entrepreneur clients come to me feeling overwhelmed, whether it's overwhelmed with tasks at work, feeling overwhelmed with being able to live up to their responsibilities at home on top of their work responsibilities, or even just overwhelmed from not living up to their own high standards that they've set for themselves.
And then walk us through what you go through with that kind of a client.
So like I said before we go through that exercise that I went through with you, really figuring out what it is that they're doing, because oftentimes feeling overwhelmed comes from a sense of seeing things almost from too big of a picture. And really, we need to be able to narrow down. So for instance, say you have on your to-do list, update sales page. Well, updating your sales page for something, that's a huge task, that could take weeks to do. You have to maybe get new images. You need to write new copy. You need to maybe even do a little bit of research ahead of time to figure out, there's all these smaller tasks. So oftentimes it's pulling back, and yes, it's great to see the big picture, but then we need to pull back and really come down. Okay, well, what are the steps that it takes? And so oftentimes it's really working with people and bringing it down to the microcosm level of, okay, well, we're going to take it from step A to step B to step C, like really identifying what's the next most important thing for you to do. And then once that's done, what's the next thing you need to do? And so that's like a really more practical business coach sort of perspective on it, because I like to, even though I'm a health coach, I feel like our health of our business impacts the health of our bodies just as much the health of our bodies impacts the health of our business. It's a two-way street. You can't just be one way or the other. And so another thing that I really like to do with my clients is help them tune into their intuition more. I myself am what I would like to call like a practical woo-woo person. I very much stayed on the more scientific, practical side for years and years and years. And only in the last couple of years have I really figured out that I have always been an intuitive person. And it is my intuition that has allowed me to grow my business in a really great way, but also turn my health around in a really important way as well. And so I find that with clients, helping them tune into their intuition is so beneficial, because not only does it help them realize when their body is responding to both positive and negative stimuli, but also allow them to get really clear cut and focused in their business and not have these feelings of, that fear of missing out, that FOMO, feeling like you have to do all of the things because you're not focused on your like one true north.
Right. I like that idea of trusting your intuition and that feeling. Like you talk a little bit about nourishing your gut, but also kind of trusting your gut whenever it gives you that kind of nervous energy or that overwhelmed energy. So what's kind of a way to tap into like what your gut is telling you?
Yeah. So like a really good exercise just to even feel the feelings of what like a negative versus positive stimuli is for you is to even just find a quiet place to sit, take off your shoes, maybe, just get really grounded and centered for a moment, take a couple deep breaths, and then start thinking about something that just brings you so much joy. Maybe it's a person, maybe it's like a place, maybe it's a thing, whatever it is. It's just something that swells with love for you, and just notice what your body's doing. Maybe you're feeling some relaxation in your shoulders. Maybe you're feeling some expansiveness in your chest. Maybe just a really calm and grounded feeling in your belly. And then flip it and start thinking about something that maybe it's like a food that you hate, or like a person that's really bothering you right now, or a place that makes you feel anxious, and any of those things. And then feel what your body's feeling. Maybe you start clenching in your jaw. Maybe you start having some tightness in the back of your neck or your head. Maybe your stomach starts doing little somersaults, a little butterfly in your stomach, and just really start to tune in like, oh, when things are aligned for me, this is how my body feels. And when things aren't aligned for me, this is how my body feels. Just so you have kind of a baseline understanding of what your body does, because everyone's different. Like some people are going to feel it more, maybe in their head and their jaw and whatnot. And other people, maybe their right knee starts to hurt. Like who knows? It could be different for everyone.
I love that idea of setting a baseline because as the people listening now, the people that need you, the people that need this podcast are the busy people that are trying to have that side hustle, whether it's just to get to their creative passion or to make money from it. So there's like no time, no time whatsoever. So it's just like giving yourself that time, that permission, and almost having a reason to have a quiet time to really listen to yourself, so that you can establish that baseline for yourself, so that when you're in the battle, when you're going through life, whether it's your job or your creative passion, it's like being able to quickly and instinctively kind of recognize, okay, this is something that I should either avoid, or this is something that I should sort of run towards.
Absolutely. And I mean, so often the number one excuse that I hear from people when it comes to self-care is that they don't have time. Without a doubt, that is the number one excuse that I hear. It's like, oh, well, I just don't have time for it. And it sounds like silly and whatnot, but like you can't afford not to make the time, because it's all about time. Time is fluid. Like you don't have time because you are choosing to spend your time in certain ways. And so if you really valued yourself and your self-care and all of that, you will make the time for it. Because really, like even for myself, when I skip my morning routine or my like morning meditation, I can feel it later in the day. Like it always ends up having a negative effect on me and I feel swamped by the end of the day. And I look back and it's like, oh yeah, I skipped that thing this morning because I thought I didn't have enough time. And look, it kicked me in the ass in the end.
Right. And I've heard you talk about your morning routine and also night routine. I was wondering, could you get into that a little bit here?
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer in having a morning routine, but I'm also a firm believer in like allowing for things to change. And, you know, you don't have to be so strict with yourself that you end up kind of shaming yourself. I'm not a big fan of like the self-shame game. That's not cool at all. So for me, my morning routine has ebbed and flowed over the years. Right now, what my morning routine looks like is I wake up, I brush my teeth and whatnot. And then the very first thing I do, like before I even really get dressed for the day, is I sit down in my office. I have like a little, you could call it a little altar. It's basically, I've got a couple candles and I've got a couple crystals and I have my tarot deck and I sit down and I set a timer for 15 minutes. And the timer, it's a lovely like Tibetan bell that goes off basically. And I have it, it's really nice. But I have it set for 15 minutes and it rings a bell every 5 minutes. So the first 5 minutes, I just sit there in silence and I do just kind of some grounding meditation, nothing fancy, just focusing on my breath. And then the second 5 minutes, I shuffle my tarot cards and I pull a card for the day just with the question of like, you know, what do I need to know for the day in order for me to be my best self? Very simple question, but always really kind of profound in the answer. And I pull a card and I sit for that second 5 minutes, just kind of pondering that card and maybe like what questions it brings up for me and all of that. And then the third 5 minutes, I have a little journal and I do just some journaling for 5 minutes. Sometimes it's based upon gratitude. Sometimes if maybe there's something that's bothering me or making me feel anxious, I'll even start out with a question of like, or the prompt of like, I feel anxious right now because of, and just let myself kind of release it all. And so that's my like 15-minute morning routine. And then I always also have a cup of what I call my like special faux coffee. It's a roasted dandelion blend mix because caffeine, I'm really sensitive to caffeine and my stomach is as well ever since I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And so I drink this like faux coffee mix in the morning and listen to some NPR and make some breakfast and have a nice little like slow start to my day. And then I get dressed and go off on the rest of the day.
Yeah, I love it. And kind of like we talked about with setting the baseline, it's so important to kind of take yourself out of your own head, if that makes sense, and to set a goal for yourself. So like in the morning, setting a plan for the day, or not even a plan, but just like a reset almost, if that makes sense. And I think for a lot of people, meditation is good. Other people writing, and other people like just writing what you're grateful for. Just that kind of self-reflection so that you can kind of have a purpose to your day, like you said, so that you're not at the end of your day being like, what the hell did I just do today? Like, what was this about?
Well, and two things I think are also important. Like, one, I don't think that there's one right or wrong way to have a morning routine. I don't think there's one right or wrong way when it comes to anything related to health or business. And I feel like it's really awesome that there are podcasts like yours and mine out there that share our experiences and the experiences of our guests. Like, that's great. But I think that what I really would love listeners to do is to listen to all of these experiences, but then really come up with the thing that works for them. Because I promise you, what works for one guest isn't going to work for the other and the other. And it really is about like maybe taking, you know, my idea of like splitting up time into these 5-minute increments works for you, but you want to do these 3 different activities with your 5 minutes. Like, that's great. You know, you got to pull from what works for you. And then also with like setting the intention for the day and whatnot, something that I personally found works for me is I write my planner or like my intention for the day and like, you know, planning out my day, I do it the night before. Like, I can't fall asleep if I have a list of 20 things in my head that I'm supposed to remember or supposed to do or anything like that. So like at the end of every workday, I pull out my, I use the productivity planner. I like it a lot. It's been using it for a while. And I fill out my most important tasks for the next day and the tasks of secondary importance and whatnot. And that really allows me to feel more calm and rested when I'm trying to fall asleep at night.
It's like a nightly brain dump like you were talking about before, and not necessarily like dumping the tasks forever, but just dumping them out of your brain to get them kind of on paper so they can just rest on that paper instead of resting in your brain all night.
Totally, because then you don't have to worry about it. And I feel like insomnia is a really big problem amongst creative entrepreneurs, or just, people that are overworked in general. We have this like tired and wired thing because we're like surviving on caffeine all morning and then running on empty all night, and then like can't fall asleep because our circadian rhythm is out, and like our cortisol hormones are all messed up. And so anything that you can do to really calm all of that down before bed is huge. Like, so for me, I don't do coffee. I don't think that coffee is bad, and I don't necessarily tell all my clients to get off of coffee by any means, but I do find that anyone dealing with anxiety always benefit from reducing the amount of caffeine that they take in. And then also for me, I love TV. I've been watching the new Twin Peaks that just started up again and whatnot.
Oh, cool.
Like, it's so good. But I really try to make it a point not to be watching TV right before bed. So for instance, like last night, my husband and I were catching up on some TV because we were out of town last week, and 9:00 rolled around and I was like, all right, well, you can't watch the show anymore because I want to watch it with you, and I'm going to go upstairs now. So you got to watch something else. And so I always come upstairs a good hour or so before I want to go to bed. And that gives me time to read a book or, journal or do whatever, just to help my eyes reset to the light. Because when we are constantly inundated with either our computer screens or our phone screens or our TV screens, all of that blue light inhibits melatonin production in the pineal gland in our brain and makes it harder for us to fall asleep. So maybe I'll listen to a podcast before I go to bed, or I'll read a book before I go to bed. They're still kind of stimulating in one way or the other, but they're not going to reduce that melatonin production and that sleep hormone production.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the pineal gland. I'll get into that later, maybe with you. But I think it's so true too. And TV was my number one like kind of obsession before this podcast, and the thing that kind of held me back the most. And I think that's really great advice too, because I would have to stop watching a show like in the middle of the show before I went to bed, because like just the way shows are now, like there's epic cliffhangers and you just want to watch the next episode or see what happens. And not only does that keep you up 5 hours later than you wanted to stay up because you just keep binging it, but also like just thinking about it before you go to bed, like, oh my God, what's going to happen to Carrie on Homeland, or what's going to happen to Ned Stark in Game of Thrones? Like it just becomes like this unnecessary stress before you go to bed that you don't really even think about.
And they're so violent too. I mean, like I was binge watching Sons of Anarchy for a while, and I felt like I was having all these terrible dreams and like fitful nights of sleep because there was all this violence going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Your brain tries to work out the story and suddenly you're a character in it that's like about to die.
Totally.
Yeah. It's scary. And the other thing I was going to ask you about is like with your morning and night routines, like when does the cell phone either come out in the morning or when does it go away at night? Because that's something that recently I've done, like is just turn that off an hour before bed and like not even think about all the things that I have to do. And also like not opening it up the first thing, like when I wake up, because if you do that, you're just setting off your day like on a roller coaster with all the tasks that you have to do, all the emails that you got. I don't know. Do you have any advice about that?
That's funny that you say that, because one of the things that has been on my like never ending to-do list is to buy a freaking alarm clock already. And so, because I still use my phone as an alarm clock, which lucky for me, I'm able to have my schedule in a way that in my acupuncture practice, I see clients more in the afternoons and evenings. And so my mornings, I'm allowed to sleep in because I am doing mostly my administrative work in the morning. So I haven't actually had an alarm go off in a while, but my phone does stay in the bedroom, which is something that I've really wanted to change and keep it out of the bedroom, because anytime we're camping or on vacation and I don't have the phone in the bedroom, I sleep so much better. I wake up so much better. So it is something that has been a challenge for me over the years, but I really love what you just said, and that's on my plan.
Yeah, and the other thing about alarms, I think alarms are my least favorite thing in the world. My wife and I went through her phone because she got a new phone and she was trying to find like a good alarm that wasn't super shrill and annoying, and she didn't have a single one. Like, so we had to pick like just like this. She has this awful alarm that always wakes me up in the morning that is just like the worst possible way that I think that you can wake up. And
That
I like
sounds terrible.
I like we were talking about before with your Tibetan bell or your Tibetan chime, and like that's like an easy way to kind of ease into like the alarm. But yeah, I think finding something that will a way to wake up that's not like that doesn't feel like a drill sergeant waking you up and getting you like charged and ready for your day, I think is definitely a key idea.
Yeah, they have those alarm clocks where it gets brighter in the room, like over a period of time. And those I have actually recommended to clients before, and I've heard really good things about them. I myself actually, one of the things that I might actually try doing this week, because you just got me thinking about this, was I have a Fitbit and I wear it when I sleep because it tracks my sleep. But you can set your Fitbit to have alarms. And I usually have an alarm going off in the middle of the afternoon that's kind of like just in what I call like my mantra or like intention alarm. And it just kind of it helps me remind me to be present in that moment. And I find it really useful. But what I could do is set one in the, fairly early morning when I'm usually up and around the time that I start meditating. And so that would be a great one where like, if I end up sleeping a little bit later than normal, it would wake me up more gently just by vibrating a little bit.
I like that. So wait, get back to you have an alarm that goes off on your phone like every day?
Oh no, on my Fitbit, because you can have them like vibrate. So I have one that goes off. It's I have it set to like 4:44 every day.
Ooh, it's my favorite number.
Yeah, it's a good one. And so what it does is I have this big goal right now where I made a decision a while back that I wanted to spend all of February of 2018 in California. My parents usually spend part of the winter times down in Palm Springs, and my dad's health hasn't been so great the last couple of years. And so the last couple of years, I've ended up having to kind of take some emergency trips down there when he's been in the hospital. And I made a decision recently that's like, I own my own business. Part of the reason why I own my own business is to have the flexibility to do what I want with my time and to be where I need to be. And so I decided that because of my dad's health and whatnot, I want to spend the entire month of February out there with them in California. Normally I live in Minnesota, so it's quite cold up here, and it's going to be a really nice change of pace to be down in the desert for the winter. But then to make that like financially feasible for me, I needed to figure out how to do some work. And so I'm right now planning a couple workshops, either in the LA area or down in like Joshua Tree, and then also a retreat. I'm planning a retreat for women entrepreneurs out in Joshua Tree over the full moon in late February. And it's going to be kind of like a self-care retreat for mind, body, and business. And so every day my alarm on my Fitbit goes off, and it helps me just kind of like really focus on that goal and how I want that to manifest. And it gives me kind of like a warm, fuzzy, like this is going to be really freaking awesome feeling in my body, which I firmly believe in the magic of like manifestation comes from ourselves. It's not that like someone else is going to all of a sudden drop something in our lap. It's that when we create those feelings that we want inside of our bodies, they're able to be reflected in our environment. So that's why I have that little alarm every day. It's to help me remember of this goal I'm setting and to bring me closer to it.
Very cool. And I think that you just won the podcast. Anytime somebody brings up that idea of like magic and just kind of getting in that mindset of, like telling the universe what you want or telling yourself what you want so the universe gives it to you, and just kind of giving yourself that almost like mini vacation during your day for your future vacation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that, you just won the podcast. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you.
So before I got to get into your podcast, I wanted to talk about acupuncture. I don't know too much about acupuncture, so can you just kind of give the dummy version for people that that don't know much about acupuncture and kind of what it does and what it can do for you?
Absolutely. So I think the simplest way to explain acupuncture is to say that by stimulating specific energy centers in our body, we stimulate our body's own natural healing response. So basically, our bodies are hardwired to fix themselves. I mean, you think about homeostasis. When we get sick, we get a fever, it burns up the virus, all these things. Our bodies are meant to stay in stable, balanced condition. That's what homeostasis is. And they want to be in balance, but oftentimes through our external circumstances or our thoughts or what we are putting into our body, that doesn't happen and things get out of whack. And what acupuncture does is it basically just gives our body a little nudge saying, hey, you you know how to fix this. Like, it's time to fix it. And that's like the simplest, weirdest way to talk about it.
I like it. And so what about people that are afraid of needles, or they're afraid of kind of the experience of going through this, or like it just kind of makes their bodies nervous thinking about doing something like this? What would you say to them?
Yeah, well, so acupuncturists, we're trained professionals. Like I myself was in school for 3 years year round, have a master's degree, board certified, go through all of these national board exams. So like, it's really important that when you go to see an acupuncturist that you're finding a licensed acupuncturist. There are some doctors out there, some chiropractors, other people that have gone through some quote unquote training programs, but those programs are usually 100 hours long, and licensed acupuncturists or doctors of acupuncture have gone through 3,000 hours of training. So that's just like a first thing to know is when you're looking for an acupuncturist, see what the regulations are in your state. Some states it's called a registered acupuncturist. Here in Minnesota, we're licensed acupuncturists. Out in California, it's like a doctor of acupuncture. It's different everywhere. But so that's the first thing. The second thing to know is that needles aren't necessary. What we learn in Chinese medicine isn't just acupuncture. It's also using non-needle therapies. It's using heat, or what we call moxibustion. It's using cupping therapy, which some people might be familiar with from the Summer Olympics and Michael Phelps and whatnot. It's also using just the energy meridians. It's using food therapy. There's so many different ways to access the body's energy using Chinese medicine, and using a needle is just one small section of the pie. And so for people that are really needle phobic, I highly still suggest that you go see an acupuncturist. You can try non-needle therapies at first, do other lifestyle and energy work. And then once you start seeing the benefits and improvements and you feel more comfortable with your particular acupuncturist, you might feel at some point that you're ready to try using needles. For the other people that aren't so needle phobic, it's good to know that like really it doesn't hurt. You can feel some strange sensations, but usually the needle going in feels like a mosquito bite. It's not painful at all. I've heard so many different things from so many different patients when it comes to the sensations in their body. Some people feel tingling, some people feel heaviness or a distended quality where the needle is. I've even had a patient once tell me it feels like a bubbling brook going down my leg, which I thought was like the coolest explanation ever.
I love that. Well, sign me up. I want a bubbling brook going down my leg.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
That's awesome. All right, so before we let you go, I really need to talk about your podcast, Health Fuels Hustle, because I love any kind of podcast that's out there. So can you talk a little bit about what you try to attempt to do with that podcast?
Yeah, so that podcast is all about helping online business owners really fuel their health with their hustle. And so in the first season, the first 2 seasons are just me talking. They're pretty short episodes. I like to say that they are the perfect length for you to take a midday walk. So when you need to get away from your computer, whether you're at your day job or at your, home office, and stretch those legs, like, these short 20 to 30 minute episodes are perfect for you to get up, go for a walk around the neighborhood, and learn something great about your health. The first season, we focused a little bit more on very specific health problems that maybe online business owners are dealing with, like neck and shoulder pain, or, even dealing with colds and flus, stuff like that. The second season, I really focused on helping creative entrepreneurs find focus and value in their self-care practices, and how they can create self-care practices that work for them. And then this third season, which just started last month and is going all through this summer, is me interviewing other creative entrepreneurs that I really admire. I specifically am interviewing mostly women's, trans, and femme entrepreneurs, but it can be applicable to anyone. But I'm asking them to share their stories about their self-care practices and how they've gone through their journeys of really valuing themselves and putting themselves first in order to build their business.
Perfect. And that's Health Fuels Hustle. You're on iTunes and
Stitcher.
iTunes and Stitcher. Cool. We'll have that linked up at the show notes page today at yourcreativepush.com/Amy Kuretsky. Amy, it is time for the final push. And this is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today, and just give them your best words of advice and really push them to either pursue their creative passions or to get to their own health so that they can pursue their creative passions.
Yeah, I guess I would say that When you're starting to feel really burnt out, remember why you went into this creative pursuit in the first place and really tap into that excitement and that beginner's energy again. And that is always going to fill up your cup more than it's going to drain your cup.
Absolutely, yeah. And to tap in, I like that idea. I'm setting an alarm today, every day, so that I can kind of tap back into that midday. I think it's really important to always kind of recenter yourself or refocus on why you started in the first place. And I like that idea of not just thinking about the idea, but getting back into that feeling that it gives your body, that excitement that it gives you, or that it gave you when you first started out, and trying to tap back into that.
Absolutely.
Love it. Amy, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for giving us that push.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And you can find Amy on our website, which is amykuretsky.com. That's AMYKURETSKY.com. On Instagram, she is Amy Kuretsky, and you can find Health Fuels Hustle on iTunes and Stitcher, and we'll have all of that linked up again at today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Amy Kuretsky. Amy, thanks again.
Bye.
Oh man, huge episode with tons of useful information. So my thank you to Amy again for coming on. Something that I definitely promote to all of you all the time is to say yes to any kind of creative idea that comes into your mind. And Amy really made me think that maybe that's not the best thing to encourage you to do. Certainly those ideas that are stuck in your brain, the ideas that have been there for a long time that you're just too afraid to get to. But sometimes that shiny object syndrome is prevalent. And a good way to combat that is to use her brain dump worksheet. And that will be linked up at today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/225 if you want to pick that up. But it's definitely an important thing to do, to realize all of these things that you do without thinking about it. Like Amy said, some of them are great things that bring you joy or bring you money or both. And some things don't bring you anything. They're just kind of useless tasks that are just wasting your time, especially if you hate doing them. That's not a good way to live. So definitely take the time to find out what's not important to you and then dump it. But better yet, find out what is important to you and then go for it. Remember those big goals that you have and the feelings that they bring you, and then remember those feelings every single day. Set a reminder if you have to take a moment to feel how that will feel to be at that goal, to reach that goal. There's about 1,000 things that I could bring up from this episode. I actually listened to it 3 times when we had the interview while I was editing it, and then I listened back to it again, and each time I got something new from it. So this could be definitely an episode to go back and to listen to again, because for people that suffer from burnout like me and you, it's sometimes not a fun way to live. So any way to kind of take control of your own health, take control of your own daily routine, your daily practices, the things that you do without thinking about them, to really analyze that, to go into your body, to recognize what makes you happy, what makes you sad, so that you are better equipped to handle your day when bad things happen or when good things happen, and to better shape your life around those feelings. So my thanks again to Amy for coming on the show. Truly an awesome conversation, and I had a lot of fun speaking with her. Today's show notes page is definitely a good one to go to. There are tons of resources that Amy provided for you to take that control of your health. yourcreativepush.com/225. But that is all I've got for you today. So hopefully you were inspired to go and get your work done and to take control of your health so that you can get your work done. I love you all, and we will see you again on Thursday. If you need that push again, have a wonderful, productive couple of days, and we will see you then. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.